Hello, good evening, and Assalamu alaikum. On behalf of ALIF, those of you who are watching us, I wish you all a very happy evening. This is going to be episode 1 of Ask with AK, which is synonymous for ability, skills, and knowledge. This is going to be our first session, so please pardon us for any technological errors. Today, we're going to have Mr. Malcolm Nicolson with us. Who is Mr. Malcolm? Why is he here? And what is the whole ideology? What is Ask with AK? We'll move on to all those questions in our later phases. Before really we start off with the session, I'll just give you a little brief intro to who Mr. Malcolm is. Mr. Malcolm is the director of Education, which is a UK-based company. He has been known as the pioneer of concept-based learning when it comes to IB. He has introduced programs which are governed around approaches to learning. He has mentored teachers as well as students for more than 20 plus countries. This is what I've been told. And I'm sure the statistics would be far more than that. So why he's here today, because we're going to discuss a very interesting topic. So hello, sir. Hello from the other side.
Hi, great to see you. Thanks for inviting me. It really is amazing to be here, and hello to everybody out there. I hope you enjoy the next 30 or 40 minutes or so.
Thank you.
And I think it would be worth asking you while we're here, and we can practice actually looking at each other there, as we're not in the same place, of course. What is ALIF? What's ALIF? What's Ask? How did you dream this up? It's amazing. Or go for it.
We don't really talk about it much because we're trying to lay low with it. But actually, ALIF, as you called it, and people call it, is actually synonymous for Academic Leaders Innovation Forum. The first time we thought of ALIF was sometimes in October. It was a rainy evening in October, if I'm trying to be more poetic with it, when ALIF was born over a cup of chai, where a group of educationists, while sitting and talking, we thought of talking about empowering educationists as well as educators and the students who are associated with the whole process of learning. So what we started off with was back in 2018 when we set off and we started off rendering our services for C stream and B stream schools, because in Pakistan, where I come from, there are schools who cannot really afford to provide professional development to the teachers. There are schools who cannot really afford to have curriculum developed by experts, right? So what we did, we were offering our services pro bono to such schools. I would not name them here because that was pro bono and I would want to keep it that way, right? So that's how we started off with. And then at the same time, we offered employment opportunities to the teachers who were willing to be a part of the teaching bandwagon, because it's mostly believed in this part of the world that anybody who's landed with education is by an accident. So there were people who were really inspired to be educators, to be educationists, to be teachers. So what we did, we offered them trainings, we offered them consultancy free of cost in the beginning, because the whole idea is to empower, right? We call it 2Apex because we believe that we want to educate, we want to empower, and we want to enlighten people out there. There's recently a project we are starting with the name of Skill School, which is going to be a skill-based school, not a school, right? Which is going to work around skills and learning and conceptual understanding. Over to you, because the show is actually about you.
Well, I actually think what you're doing is absolutely inspirational, and the idea of trying to support learners who may not be receiving an education is amazing in itself. But to try to focus on the relevant skills for today and tomorrow is also a wonderful way to do it, because whilst content is there, content is accessible at the movement of your thumbs these days. The skills with which to do something with that knowledge is another matter altogether. So if we can help students to access and make sense of the world themselves by providing them with the skills to do so, then that is absolutely amazing. And I think you're right to put skills up front. It's great. And thank you for the kind introduction. I did do a lot of work when I was at the IB, and we did place skills right at the center of what those programs are all about. And we call it approaches to learning skills in the IB community. But really it is at the center of what we're doing, learning how to learn, if you like. And And certainly in the next 20, 30 minutes, we'll be talking about how teachers can revise what they do, how they do it, so that that idea of learning how to learn skills are at the very center. Because when students have a good idea of the skills that they're learning, what those skills are, and the extent to which they've learned them, then it does support them in every single sense.
Okay. Before really we
Yeah.
proceed, before really we proceed with this whole discussion on skills-based learning and conceptual framework and all those fancy terms that we've been taught over the course of the teaching careers, what is a skill? How is it different from knowledge?
I think it's a really good point. Let's start there. Well, why not? We're here to talk
who
about
came
skills.
first, the skill or the school?
A lot of people kind of assume, well, I know what a skill is. I know what knowledge is. And what we tend to do is then look to places for inspiration. I often look to the work of Lynn Erickson and Wiggins, McTighe, people like that, to see what they would say. And certainly from Lynn Erickson's point of view, she looks at knowledge, understanding, and skills as being a three-way or a 3D curriculum, if you like, moving from a 2D curriculum of content or knowledge and skills, but to content, knowledge, skills, and understanding. That's the conceptual part. She would say that the knowledge, it's a structure where we start with the foundations of fact and information, which builds up towards generalizations, theories, and concepts. So the knowledge, she would say, is the facts and the information, stuff that you know. In terms of skills, you could define them in many ways, but it's really the ability to do something. It's that piece of active language there, do, something you can do. But the key with skills is it's not just something you can do. You're not just born with it. Roger Federer doesn't have this beautiful forehand shot just because he was born one morning with this ability under his pillow. It's something that can be taught, practiced, and you can improve. And that's the point of skills, is that with practice you can improve. The implications for that, for teachers and for parents and for students, are how to provide enough opportunities for practice. Because you can teach the skill, but having taught it, the students need time and opportunities to practice. And there is in the delight for teachers is, how can I come up with opportunities where students can practice these skills? Because as with music, with tennis, football, cricket, or anything, you can get better the more you practice.
True.
So it's something you can do, is the short answer.
Okay, when you say, because you just said that it's the skills can be taught, right? The skills can be instilled. But if we put it in today's context with COVID-19 happening and the horizons of education changing overnight, there was a 180-degree shift. Like on Monday, we knew that we have to go digital without any training. Yes, trainings were provided, but initially it was a challenge that came to every teacher's plate, right? Then in such a scenario, when we know that challenges are not even we're not even aware of what challenges are going to be there, which skills do you think need to be taught to actually cater the challenges which we don't know that those would be there 10 years down the lane, or maybe 20 years down the lane, or maybe overnight, right? So which are those skills that you think are significant and important?
Yeah, it's, I mean, first of all, congratulations to all the teachers here who made it through that period of time. What a remarkable achievement to show such adaptability, flexibility, and the willingness to learn. And that's another huge part of it. Willingness to learn, demonstrating a growth mindset, demonstrating that you can be a risk taker, that you can actually try something new and make it work. So I take my hat off to all those teachers out there who made it happen. It's interesting what skills are needed now. Have times changed? Yes, times have changed, but there are key skills that are important, have always been important. There's a lot of talk about 21st century skills, and we kind of know what they are, things like creativity, critical thinking skills, communication, collaboration, and so on. And they've been talked about for a long time. what I think a lot of schools have seen is with the COVID time, the students who succeeded in the time where they were remote learning were those with well advanced self-management skills, those who had the skills to prioritize, to keep to time, to keep to deadlines, but also able to intrinsically motivate themselves to get going. What strategies and skills do those students have to be able to be independent, self-regulated learners who can just get up and go and keep going? So I think during the COVID crisis, it was those self-management skills, which includes the ability to just keep going, even when you're finding it difficult. What can I do to keep going? Coming back to the idea of growth mindset and failing well, how can I learn how to bounce back? What strategies can I develop for bouncing back and not making the same mistake time after time? But so I think that was through the crisis. As we move beyond, I read a fantastic paper the other day that was sponsored by Microsoft and written by Fulham and a group of others. But Fulham, of course, is a very big name in education. And this was an article published just in the last 2 weeks. It's absolutely superb. And they believe that there are 6 C's that are important for the post-COVID time. 2 of them are attributes and 4 of them are skill sets. And the 6 C's that they highlight are character and citizenship, which are, of course, character attributes, so character and citizenship, but then collaboration, communication, creativity, and critical thinking. They believe that based on studies all over the world, these are the skill sets that will be needed in the post-COVID world. So if schools, if parents, individuals, anybody involved with young people and with adult learning as well, if they focus on ideas of collaboration, communication, creativity, and critical thinking, they are the key skill sets moving forwards.
Okay, this whole direction that you've just pointed me towards about these 6 big skills, and obviously they're obviously going to be underlying skills. The challenge over here is, Malcolm, if I may put it very blatantly, is that we have teachers who are not a byproduct of a system which was based around conceptual learning, including myself. I remember when I was in college, we weren't really taught to think. We weren't being told to think outside the box, maybe experiment with the things we wanted to learn, maybe be inspired about learning. But yes, the focus was about scores, right? So scores took a precedence. And we can't really do anything about it because that's how the system was. But fortunately, when I came to education, I got to work with wonderful, wonderful people who groomed me in that way. But not every teacher, not every educator out there has that kind of, you can say, that kind of opportunity coming their way. So what do you suggest to the parents and the teachers and the educators, most importantly, that in any capacity, whether they're homeschooling the children or however they're doing it, what do you suggest them to do to, train their learners to think how to think? What could be those strategies that can be adopted at such a point in time where we are not really sure of what's happening, and we don't really have, not everybody has that kind of opportunities coming their way? What would be your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, what can we do to get students thinking? How can we force them to think? First of all, I think one of the things we've got to think about is that learning is a social activity. We learn together. People love to learn together, and children learn to love with other children, learn with other children. And this is where the collaboration and communication piece is so strong. If we can support students with positive communication skills so that they know how to work with other people, that they can actually then develop the critical thinking skills together and to question everything. If you read newspaper articles, internet articles, anything you see on the TV, question it. Question everything. Question the veracity, question whether it's reliable. Is that source reliable? Is this particular news channel trying to take us down one way? So that you're constantly having to work out the world. I enjoy doing this with my own children. My children are aged 11 and 14. And we're constantly questioning what we see on TV. What are they trying to make us think? Are they trying to make us think this way or that way? Is there a neutral line here? So keep just probing, asking young people constantly to question everything. and then look at the data. You know, look at any COVID data set that we're getting now. Whether you look at the Vietnamese data set, Germany, USA, UK, France, Italy, Singapore, wherever, have a look at them, and just say, ask your kids, what's this telling us? If we compare that one with that one, what do you see? And then it's fun. You're not comparing data sets just to try and get a score or something. It can be actually fun. And I would argue any time that you can make something fun and almost into a game, then it actually starts to be inspiring. But we don't have to do something because it's going to lead to a grade. The more we can move students' focus away from scores, away from grades at as young an age as possible, the better. So that they're actually looking at, how have I learned, what have I learned, and what can I do to get better? Which again comes back to the growth mindset I mentioned earlier. If students can develop those skills of being able to see, this is what I can do, but this is what I need to do it better, rather than, oh, I got a 3 and I want to get a 5, or I got a C but I want to get a B+. Think of it in, this is what I can do, how am I going to improve? And that again comes back to failing well. How am I going to improve? I didn't do so well in that project, that test, that essay. Okay, what can I do next time to do better? And to analyze. That's something that anybody can do, is to reflect. And if you don't mind, I'm going to just show some pictures here.
Sure.
This actually is quite relevant. I'm just going to share my screen.
Sure.
I think it's useful to encourage children to reflect as often as possible. And I think this actually does point to quite a few problems that we have with schooling at the moment. Okay, hopefully you can see my. Okay. Can you see it now?
Yeah, we can perfectly well.
Yeah, because my argument now, I mean, I've talked to my own children about this a lot. I said, why don't you enjoy school? Why are you enjoying playing on your Xbox, PlayStation, PC, whatever games all the time? Why is that so much more rewarding? And both of them said, well, all we do at school is write in silence. You think, well, if we're wanting to develop those 6 C's that I mentioned before, character, citizenship, collaboration, communication, creativity, critical thinking, then how are we doing that? By having people sitting in silence and writing. We're not developing communication, creativity, collaboration at all, or critical thinking. What we're doing is training children to be compliant. Yeah, we're saying, right, be compliant. It's a model that was around in the Victorian era to try to get kids ready to work in the factories and in the cotton mills and so on. So that's just not working today. We need to engage students. So I got chatting to my kids. I got a lot of inspiration from them. My daughter, Amy, plays Overwatch, and I hope you can see here some images from Overwatch. I don't understand it. I don't like it. I don't want to play, but she loves it. What's really interesting is she takes part in Overwatch matches in teams, where she needs to communicate with her team members and help each other so that they win or lose as a team. But what's really interesting is you'll see the picture on the right. That's the data set that she receives at the end of any game, whether they've won or not. And she then looks back at it and analyzes the game. She reflects on her performance. She watches video footage back again and works out, if I had done this, then that would have happened and been better. If my teammate had done that, then this would have been better. So she is automatically reflecting. She's learning to fail well by reflecting on her performance. When in school is she getting the opportunity to firstly reflect on performance in such a way and be so analytical? And if she does in school, do you think she actually looks back at any essay she's done or test and analyzes it with the same passion? No. And in those instances, she's been driven to get a particular score. In this case, she's been driven by just wanting to be better. The motivation is now intrinsic, It's coming from within her, and she is reflecting and critically analyzing her performance. This is her, this is Amy playing Minecraft. Again, she's getting to demonstrate so many of those C's that we mentioned earlier, those 6 C's. She's collaborating with friends. Four of them together build a city, build a town. And they work together. They're being creative and they're communicating and collaborating on something. And again, they can go back, analyze what they've done, and improve on it. So again, why does she have this opportunity at home, but never in school? In her school, she never has an opportunity to demonstrate collaboration, creativity, or improve her communication skills. Now, coming to my son, James, he loves driving. Not real cars, he's not old enough, but this is his Formula One game. Again, the data that he's receiving while he's driving, he's receiving data about his tire temp, his levels of fuel, the performance of the engine, and afterwards he can then watch his performance again and work out where did he go right, where did he go wrong, and he can actually improve his performance. Again, reflection is built in, but also what's great here is the amount of agency that he has. He can choose his car.
It's becoming experiential learning.
Yeah, it's fantastic. He's learning by doing, and he has the choice of which car, which team. He can choose which arena he's in. How often do students have that choice? Because again, motivation and engagement relates to the choice that students have. So if we're setting up learning experiences for students, what choice do they have? Or are they just doing what the teacher or the parent tells them to do? So the student choice, the student's voice really plays into it. And the last example I want to give here is Roblox. James has been playing Roblox, and you'll see in the very center there, that's a theme park that he has designed with his friends. It's absolutely incredible. And you can see on the right-hand side, that's a picture of one of his log flume rides that he designed. On the left-hand side of the book, you can see the metro rail system that they've designed to take them around the place from ride to ride. They've designed the rides. They set the cost for coming in. You can see at the top left, there's general statistics come up so that they know how many guests they've got, how much they're earning. On the bottom right, that's the statistics around the particular ride that they designed. So they're designing, they're collaborating, they're communicating with each other. They're having to think of economics, engineering. It's absolutely fantastic. Absolutely. Look at the creativity that goes into this and the fun. So they are demonstrating these skills that Fulham had highlighted, these 6 C's. They're demonstrating them here. They're having the chance to practice them and to really enjoy doing so. But when do we ever enable students to demonstrate that creativity and that level of collaboration in the school setting? So my argument is, and I'm going to come back to you, you're going to see my horrible face now again.
No, it's lovely.
Here I come. Hopefully, see.
Yeah.
What my plea is to teachers and to parents is, don't think that these games are a bad thing because they're games. They are learning and they're practicing skills all the time. So my challenge then would be to teachers, how can we use what we know from these games? How can we create learning experiences that are unique, that enable creativity, critical thinking, learning from mistakes, problem solving, experimentation, getting things wrong, improving on them? How can we create classroom experiences that do that, and where students are motivated because they love it, because they're learning, they're collaborating with each other, and they're not doing it for school, they're doing it because it's rewarding and they are intrinsically rewarded. And that's my challenge to teachers, is to create classroom activities or to parents home activities that achieve all those things.
The audience is open for questions. We have crossed 7:25 minutes, so we have 10 minutes for questioning. Meanwhile, there's another thing that just came to my mind while listening to when you were talking about the whole ideology of failing well. I think that's also something that is missing. Maybe would you like to talk about that a little more, because that is an interesting concept. We don't really see many educators, we don't really see in many schools talking about failing well, because the whole objective of going to an institute is that you are going to ace in life, right? You're going to bring those A stars back home. You're going to bring back sevens and sixes, which is okay. But where comes the whole problem of learning to fail well?
Yeah, it's a great phrase, and it's one that's used an awful lot by my friend Lance King, who is an absolutely fantastic educator in the skills-based learning world. And he's written books on failing well. And you also see it a little bit in some schools. There's a school in London called Wimbledon School, obviously quite close to the tennis place, for those who know that, where they have a failing well week. I would argue that a failing well week is not as effective as helping students to fail well all the time. And this doesn't mean, okay, let's have a week where we fail, fail, fail. It means every unit, every day, all the time, helping students to develop the strategies to fail well. The student who fails badly is the one who maybe does an essay or a test or a lab report or whatever, doesn't do very well and goes, oh well, move on, and moves on to the next thing. The student who fails well, and I know lots of teachers do teach this anyway, but they might not have attached the label failing well to it. It's the student who looks at what they've done and goes, okay, right, I want to find out what I did wrong there and how I did it. And then to address it, find out what they need to do, redo it, re-answer questions or rewrite portions of the essay or whatever, redo it, and then go to the teacher and say, how does this look? Have I addressed what you thought I'd missed out on? And go, okay, and now I've learned. That's the student that fails well. It might sound simple, but that's the student who then develops the resilience for the future. Because as we all know, we all fail at times. Life can be tough. And if we've never, ever prepared ourselves for that moment of failure, if you reach the age of 18, 21, 25, at some point, something's going to happen where you're going to have to bounce back. You're going to have to show that resilience.
Absolutely.
And this is helping you to build resilience. It's the skills that build into being resilient.
Right. I'm just going to announce it again. We're taking questions from the audience. So if you people, those of you who are watching, if you have any questions, feel free to throw them in the question box. I'd be putting it to Mr. Malcolm. Meanwhile, coming back to, since we were talking about content and skills versus scores, content is something that is, we can say that is something we cannot really get rid of, because it's inevitable for teaching skills. But especially the question that that actually looms over all of it is that since the content is available, we have internet, we have resources, the world is expanding, information is just like a few clicks away. So the whole ideology is that what content should be taught, which is actually going to aid the learning, which is catered around skills, right? With how should we divide that? How should we decide that, especially in a very you can say a very confined schooling system? Because in Pakistan, unfortunately, there are schools who are opting for concept-based curriculum. There are schools who are going for skills-based learning, but for some reasons, which I cannot still decipher, the heart of the education, the focus remains still around the content. So we need to work around that content. What would you want to comment on that? And what do you think?
Yeah,
should be that?
Content is really important, right? Just because we're talking about developing conceptual understanding and skills development doesn't mean to say that content isn't important. It is important. You need content so that you can practice your skills. You need factual content in order to build the foundation towards a conceptual understanding. And you need the skills to develop inquiry, because the way you develop conceptual understanding is through inquiry, hopefully collaborating with other people and doing so. So you don't get conceptual understanding without good content. You don't get good content without the skill. They all work really, really well together. But the important thing these days is, as you quite rightly say, there's so much information in the world. What do you choose? And this again relates to motivation and engagement for young people. If it's not purposeful and it's not meaningful, why learn it? There's no relevance. And this is it. how do we choose relevant and meaningful content? I would argue that the big issues in the world are covered nicely with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs. You know, if students were to develop an understanding of the issues around the SDGs, there's nothing more meaningful. And they would make for wonderful interdisciplinary inquiries where students have almost like a playground for practicing skills. How can we inquire into poverty, gender inequality, or general inequalities, climate action, life on water, life on land, those kind of ideas, clean energy? How do we inquire into those to develop conceptual understandings of those big picture items and use our skills to do so? So I think the key is selection of content that matters, that is relevant, but also relates to students' own lives. And that's the great thing about these SDGs, is that whilst they are global issues, they all have local manifestations. So you can actually find local examples. And that's what engages students, is something that matters to their lives and can connect to them. If it's just abstract and bizarre, and I know a lot of mathematics teachers might be shouting at me right now saying, well, there are some things they just need to know. Well, if you're going to teach some of these more abstract ideas, same in many scientific studies, then at least enable students to understand how it fits in their life. Why am I learning this? If you can answer that question for students, why they're learning it, then it will be more meaningful, it will be relevant, and more motivating.
Absolutely, absolutely. I agree to that. Also, because you mentioned this theory about interdisciplinary learning, which is the new big thing, which is actually where learning transcended from. If we go back to the early ages, we go back to the Plato's time or Socrates, the learning was not compartmentalized. This is a big objection I have on today's curriculum and academicians, that they try to compartmentalize learning, that maths cannot be linked with languages, history cannot be linked with mathematics, right? So I think this whole ideology of interdisciplinary learning is absolutely brilliant. What would you recommend to the teachers who are watching it, to how to actually inculcate that in their existing curriculum, which is somewhat, you can say, rigid, somewhat is not that flexible? How we can channelize learning for interdisciplinary modules?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. With interdisciplinary learning, the main thing again is come up with something that is purposeful and meaningful, but root it or ground it in the disciplines. So start with your disciplines, with your existing content, and think, okay, maybe even use the skills we talked about. If we're studying a particular text in literature, for example, you think of the text, you analyze it, you use your critical thinking skills, but how am I going to communicate or collaborate with other people? Those skills of communication, collaboration, who am I going to write towards? Or let's take another example. We look at climate change. You're looking at climate change within your humanities or your science lessons, but you want to actually make it interdisciplinary. Well, how about your languages? I want to persuade, and this is where the game type of idea comes into it. Okay, who do you want to persuade to do something about climate action? Okay, ask the students, who do you think should be doing something? And they could come up with politicians, TV personalities, athletes, whoever. Right, now write a letter to them, persuading them that this must be done. Immediately, they've got to show an understanding of climate change from either a scientific or a humanities point of view, and they've got to demonstrate their language skills in writing a persuasive piece. Already, that is an interdisciplinary piece of work. You've used your languages to further your science or your humanities knowledge. And so it goes on. How can our school better address the challenges of climate change? You've immediately got design thinking there, design technology, the arts can get involved with this kind of thing. And again, your sciences, what we're going to do as a school. So there's many, many ways, but use the big challenges for the world, like poverty, like climate action, extinction of species, and so on like that. The SDGs are a great avenue for this.
Right, right. And we need to be more humane than anything else at this point in time. I would take a question from the audience. Chavez Arif has commented, and the question is for you, Malcolm. Do you think esports and video games should be eventually made part of the curriculum for students?
Well, funnily enough,
I think it's
talking of it, speaking of interdisciplinary, my son James, when he was at primary school, did write a letter to the head teacher requesting that Minecraft become a regular part of the curriculum, and Minecraft is quite a big part of the curriculum. I do know in Pakistan, for example, my friend Wakas he's in Islamabad. He's an expert on bringing in Minecraft into the curriculum. So if Wakas is watching, I'm sure he could help with that. I think so. Let's get these things in. Why not? If we break away from our idea of the disciplines, what are the skills that students need to know? Going back to those 6 C's, you can develop your character and citizenship through these games, and collaboration, communication, critical thinking, creativity. Why not? Why not? I think it would be absolutely fantastic. So long as there's that reflection, which skills, and that's the piece, to be explicit about it. When I talk to my children, what skills have you been using? Oh, I don't know. Okay, let's think about it. So it's that conversation you have with the students is, okay, you've just beaten Lewis Hamilton in your Formula One drive. How did you do it? What skills did you demonstrate? How did you work with your engineering team in order to do this? What did you do? And then they have that explicit recognition of the skills that they've learned and practiced and need to keep practicing to improve. So it's the conversation. So I think, yes, get these games into the curriculum, but make sure that you have the conversation around the skills and kind of scaffold that reflection, if you like. I think it's a brilliant question. Thank you for that.
You need to reflect over it, because if it's just for fun and you're not really deriving anything out of it, that is also not learning. Okay, another question, I think this would be the last question if there's not going to be any other question from the audience, is that if we forecast the future of education maybe 10 years down the lane, which skills do you think, Malcolm, are going to be inevitable for learning 10 years down the lane? Let's visualize.
It's a good point. When I was at the IB, we did this research back, it must be 10 years ago now, and the skills that were in demand by universities, employers, life in general, society, that people were looking for then were things like collaboration, creativity, people who can, this isn't so much a skill, but people who can demonstrate empathy and compassion. That's where the future is, I think. So I don't think that things have necessarily changed that much in the last 10 years. Although if you go on social media, you always see the new list of the skills that are needed. It will be these 6 C's that Fulham pointed out that I mentioned earlier: critical thinking, creativity, collaboration, and communication. They're the ones that will be in demand. But I think I would add a C to it. Fulham's got the 6 C's: character, citizenship, etc. I would add another C: compassion. I think more and more and more, if we can create opportunities in classrooms for students to understand what compassion is and then to demonstrate compassion, that's what's going to make a difference in the world. Yes, creativity and collaboration, but let's get students with opportunities to develop compassion. I think that's where it is. But in 10 years' time, I think as well how we reward learning will change. I think we're going to move further away from the idea of the big certificate with scores on it. And I think we'll have more and more micro-credentials. Students will be earning certificates throughout their school experience from the age of 4 to 18 to 25 and throughout life until you're much older, as we used to say at the IB, from cradle to grave, which might sound a bit maudlin, but I think we'll be recognizing that we can be achieving learning outcomes for your whole life. But I think we'll see micro-credentials in critical thinking, creativity, entrepreneurship skills, leadership skills, those kind of areas. I think we'll be certificating in those areas and not just our big diplomas, our big IGCSEs, IB diplomas, MYPs,
You're not
SATs,
saying
or
that.
whatever.
You're not saying that here. Okay, I'll take another question from the audience. Ms. Sobia Shahid has commented that teachers usually are more open to gamification and relating teaching to students' lives, right? The issue is usually redundant curricula that are designed by people removed from changes in life and society that happens by the minute. How can the distance between the curriculum designers and the teachers be bridged, keeping in mind the big issue of cost involved in creating and devising a curriculum? Brilliant question, I would say. Did you catch that, Malcolm?
Yeah, that I just lost you at the end, right? I got the gist of it. It's a fantastic question. How can we bridge that gap?
Do you want me to repeat it?
I think we have to hope that. No, it's okay. I think I caught the gist of it. It's a brilliant question. I think we've just got to hope that teachers are able to get involved, because teachers do know best. Teachers need to be trusted. Organizations like CAIE, Cambridge, and the IB and others trust teachers very, very well, because they know the students best. And those organizations develop their curriculum using teachers. But how can we get national, state, provincial curriculums to develop? We've got to get school leaders promoting their teachers to these boards, because until they do, we're going to end up again and again and again. So at state and national.
All right, thank you. I
So
did.
we managed to get through 40 minutes relatively safely,
Yeah,
but I think the technology is breaking down a bit now.
Yeah, I'll just compile together whatever you have discussed today. We've talked about skills. We've talked about how skills have to take a precedence over scores. There's another question coming up. This would be the last question, and then we're going to conclude it because Mr. Malcolm's time is somewhat limited. Mr. Muhammad Ijaz has commented, how will you motivate your parents for digital student instead of digital study instead of traditional study? Like, yeah, this is a challenge that's teachers are facing all over the world. I'll just rephrase it. He's just saying that how are we going to motivate the parents for digital education instead of traditional mode of face-to-face education? Maybe a one-liner would do.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, how are we going to be learning in the future? The world is moving on screen, and if you want your child to have the best possible start, then you have to embrace it. Otherwise,
Absolutely.
You're not enabling your child to have the best possible start.
Absolutely. I would like to quote that I normally quote in my classroom is that wisdom is not a product of schooling. It is actually a product of learning, right? And learning is not only confined within the walls of the classroom. Rather, in my opinion, this actually comes from experiences and exposure. So we as a nation, we as educators, we as parents, students, or whosoever we are in the world, we should be able to adapt to change, right? If you're not willing to change, if you're not willing to be flexible, we're going to be wiped out altogether. Aliens are going to take over.
Yeah.
That's how it's going to be. So thank you so very much, Malcolm, for being here with us. It was lovely talking to you. For those of you who had put questions, thank you so very much for showcasing love. Yeah, it indeed is an honor for Team ALIF for having such a renowned educationist as yourself as our first guest speaker. We're inshallah going to be back in a month's time or maybe 20 days down the lane with a new topic, with a new speaker from a different part of the world. So till then, take very good care of yourself. Keep ascending to epics. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.